Hello and welcome. Tonight, I will tell you a quiet story about change. It is a story for anyone who feels stuck in the middle of their own life. Sit back, relax, and let the rain in this story wash away your busy day. The story begins in the city of Oak Haven. It was late November in the year 2025. In Oak Haven, the sky was almost always gray. The buildings were tall and gray. The streets were wet and gray. And for Arthur, life felt exactly the same. Gray, heavy, and silent. Arthur was 35 years old. He worked as an accountant in a tall glass building. He was a good man, but he was a tired man. Very tired. On this particular Tuesday evening, it was raining. The cold rain fell on the pavement. Tap, tap, tap. People rushed past Arthur with their umbrellas, moving fast, always moving fast. But Arthur walked slowly. He carried his heavy work bag on his shoulder. His shoes made a wet sound on the street. He walked the same path home every single day. He turned left at the bank. He crossed the bridge over the dark river. He walked past the old bakery. Every day was the same. Wake up. Work, walk home, sleep. Arthur felt like a ghost. He felt like he was invisible in his own life. He often thought, is this it? Is this all there is? The year 2026 was coming soon. Everyone on the internet and on television was talking about it. New year, new you, they shouted, change your life in 2026. But Arthur did not feel excited. He felt afraid. He was afraid that 2026 would be exactly like 2025, and 2024, and 2023. He kept walking, looking down at his feet, but then Arthur stopped. He was standing in front of a small, dusty shop window. He had walked past this shop 1,000 times, but he had never really looked at it. The sign above the door was faded gold. It said, "The timekeeper's clock." Arthur looked into the glass window. He saw his own reflection. He saw a man with wet hair, tired eyes, and slumped shoulders. He looked at the man in the glass, and for a moment he did not recognize him. The man in the window looked lost. In the quiet street, Arthur heard a sound coming from inside the shop. Tick-tock, tick-tock. It was just another rainy Tuesday evening in Oak Haven, or at least Arthur thought it was. He stood there in the cold rain, looking at the old shop. He did not know that this evening would change everything. He thought he was just looking at a clock, but the clock was waiting for him. Here is part 2 of the story. Part 2. The silent chaos. Arthur unlocked the door to his apartment and stepped inside. He closed the door against the rain, but he did not feel better. If the city outside was gray and empty, his apartment was full of chaos. He turned on the light. The yellow bulb flickered. Arthur looked around his living room. There were piles of old magazines on the floor. There were dirty coffee cups on the table from 3 days ago. There were clothes on the chair and books that he had bought but never read. The room was messy. It was so messy that it made Arthur's head hurt. He took off his wet coat and threw it on the sofa. He did not hang it up. He just threw it. This was his habit. He always said, "I will clean it later." But later never came. Arthur walked to his small desk. He pushed aside a stack of papers and opened his laptop. He wanted to change. He really did. He opened a new document and typed the words. My plan for 2026. He stared at the white screen. The little black line on the screen blinked at him. Blink, blink, blink. It was waiting for him to write something amazing. Arthur wanted to write, I will run a marathon. I will learn French. I will get a promotion. I will be happy. But his hands did not move. He looked at the dirty cups. He looked at the laundry. He looked at the dark window. He felt a heavy weight in his chest. The list was too big. The mess was too big. He felt paralyzed. "I cannot do this," he whispered to the empty room. "I am 35, and I cannot even keep my room clean. How can I change my life?" The silence in the apartment became too loud. He felt suffocated. He needed to get out. He needed to breathe. Arthur closed his laptop. He grabbed his wet coat again. He did not know where he was going. He just knew he could not stay in this messy room with his failures. He ran back down the stairs and out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped, but the streets were wet. His feet moved on their own. Without thinking, he walked back the way he came. He walked past the bakery. He crossed the bridge. He stopped in front of the old shop, the timekeeper's clock. It was late, almost 9 o'clock at night. Most shops were dark, but this shop was glowing. A warm, orange light shone through the glass window. Inside, Arthur could see hundreds of clocks on the walls. Big clocks, small clocks, wooden clocks, gold clocks. He felt a strange pull. It was like a magnet. He wanted to be inside that warm light. He wanted to escape the chaos of his life. Arthur lifted his hand. He hesitated for 1 second. Then he reached for the cold brass handle of the door. He did not know what was waiting for him inside. And he certainly did not know that the old woman inside the shop already knew his name. A bell chimed softly, dingling, as Arthur stepped inside. The shop smelled like old paper, cinnamon, and dust. It was warmer than the street outside. The walls were covered in clocks, hundreds of them. But strangely, they did not all tick at the same time. The sound was like a gentle heartbeat. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Behind a high wooden counter stood a small, elderly woman. She had white hair pulled back in a bun and sharp, bright blue eyes. She was polishing a brass pocket watch with a cloth. She did not look up. "You are late, Arthur," she said. Arthur froze. How do you know my name?" The woman smiled a small, secret smile. "I know many things. I am Mrs. Gable, and you, young man, look like you are carrying the weight of the world in that wet coat." Arthur walked closer. I want to buy a clock, maybe an alarm clock. I need to wake up earlier. I need to change my schedule." Mrs. Gable laughed. It was a dry, cracking sound. "You do not need a clock, Arthur. You have enough time. You just do not have any space." She put down the watch and looked him in the eye. "You want to change your life for the new year, yes?" "Yes," Arthur said. "I want to be different. Better." "Then you must listen," Mrs. Gable said. She held up one finger. "Step 1 is not about doing new things. Step 1 is the clearing." "The clearing?" Arthur asked. "You are trying to build a castle on a pile of garbage," she said sharply. "Go home. Do not write a list. Do not run a marathon. Just remove what is broken. Clean the floor. Throw away the old papers. Create empty space. That is the only way." Arthur frowned. He felt disappointed. He wanted a secret to success. He wanted a magic strategy. Cleaning his room sounded boring. It sounded too simple. "I need real change," Arthur said, a little angrily. "I'm going to do big things. I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. tomorrow. I'm going to run. I'm going to read." Mrs. Gable sighed. She reached into a drawer and wrote something on a small piece of paper. She slipped it into Arthur's pocket. "You will learn," she whispered. Arthur left the shop. He felt determined to prove her wrong. He went home and set his alarm for 5 a.m. The next morning, he woke up early. He was tired. His eyes burned. He forced himself to run in the cold morning air. He hated every step. He came home and tried to read a difficult book. He fell asleep on the sofa. He tried to study French, but his messy desk distracted him. He couldn't find his pen. He couldn't find his notebook under the piles of paper. By Thursday evening, Arthur crashed. He was exhausted. He ordered fast food because he was too tired to cook. He didn't read. He didn't run. He sat on his floor, surrounded by the same mess, eating a greasy burger. He felt worse than before. He had tried to do everything, and he had failed at everything. It's useless, he thought. She was right. I am building a castle on garbage. He put his hand in his pocket to find a tissue, but his fingers touched a small, stiff piece of paper. It was the note from Mrs. Gable. He pulled it out and read the handwritten words. He thought he still had time to fix things with his big plans. He was wrong. Arthur sat on the floor under the yellow light of his living room lamp. He held the small note in his trembling fingers. The handwriting was elegant and sharp, just like Mrs. Gable. It read, "You cannot build a new house on broken stones. Clear the stones first." Arthur read it once. Then he read it again. For the first time in years, Arthur felt something break inside him. It was his pride. He realized he had been arrogant. He thought he could change his entire life in 2 days just by sheer force. He thought he could ignore the mess and just run forward. But the mess was holding him back. He stood up. He did not feel excited. He did not feel motivated. He just felt quiet. "Okay," he said to the empty room. "No more magic tricks. No more big lists." He walked to his desk, the desk that was covered in mountains of paper and trash. This was step 2, the small routine. Arthur did not try to clean the whole apartment. He did not touch the kitchen. He did not touch the bedroom. He focused only on the desk. He took a black trash bag. He picked up the old receipts. Crunch. Into the bag. He picked up the dried-up pens. Clack. Into the bag. He picked up the magazines from 2023. Thump. Into the bag. It took him 1 hour. When he finished, the desk was empty. He took a cloth and wiped the dust away. He saw the dark wood of the desk surface for the first time in months. It was just a clean desk. It wasn't $1 million. It wasn't a new career. But looking at that clean, empty square of wood, Arthur felt his lungs open. He could breathe. That night, he made a new choice. He picked up his alarm clock. He did not set it for 5 a.m. That was too hard. He set it for 6:45 a.m., just 15 minutes earlier than normal. "Small," he whispered. "Keep it small." He went to bed. The apartment was still messy, but the desk was clean, and in his mind, the chaos was a little quieter. Arthur slept deeply that night. He had stopped running from his life, and he had started to fix it. He had passed the point of no return. He was no longer waiting for a miracle. He was building a foundation. When he woke up the next morning, he felt a tiny spark of hope in his chest. But he did not know that the hardest test was coming in December. The winter was about to get much colder. November turned into December. The days grew shorter and the air grew colder. At the beginning, change feels exciting, but in the middle, change feels boring. This was the lesson of the long road. Arthur kept his promise. This was step 3, consistency. Every morning, the alarm rang at 6:45 a.m. Every morning, Arthur woke up. He did not want to. His bed was warm and the room was cold, but he got up. He made his bed. He drank a glass of water. He read 5 pages of a book. He did not run a marathon. He just walked for 20 minutes. Day 10, day 15, day 20. It was dull. It was quiet. No one clapped for him. No one gave him a gold medal for making his bed. Then came the test of step 4, distraction. It was a Friday night. Arthur's phone buzzed loudly on his clean desk. It was his friends Mark and David. "Come out, Arthur. We are at the Red Lion Pub. Forget your boring routine. Let's have fun." Arthur looked at the phone. He could hear the laughter and music in his mind. He wanted to go. He wanted to forget his discipline. He wanted to be the old Arthur who stayed out late and slept all weekend. He felt a deep ache of loneliness. He typed, "Sorry, guys. Not tonight." He put the phone down. The silence in the room felt heavy. He felt like he was missing out on life. 2 days later, a storm hit Oak Haven. Not just a rainstorm, but a work storm. Arthur's boss, Mr. Henderson, shouted at him for a small mistake in a report. "You are not paying attention, Arthur." Mr. Henderson yelled in front of everyone. Arthur's face burned with shame. He had been trying so hard. He was waking up early. He was reading. He was cleaning. And still, he was being yelled at. "It isn't working." A voice whispered in his head, "You are still the same loser. You are just a loser with a clean desk." That evening, Arthur walked home in the pouring rain. He was cold, angry, and tired. He passed a fast food restaurant. The smell of grease called to him. "Just give up," it said. "Comfort yourself." He almost went in. He almost stopped. But his feet kept moving. They dragged him through the puddles, past the bakery, over the bridge. He did not go home. He went to the only place that made sense. He stood outside the timekeeper's clock. The shop was dark. The lights were off. Mrs. Gable was gone for the night. Arthur stood there, shivering in the freezing wind, staring at his own wet reflection in the glass. He felt like crying. He had come so far, but he felt so empty. And still, the hardest part of his journey was waiting at the end of the road. It was December 31st, 2025. New Year's Eve. The city of Oak Haven was frantic. People were running through the streets with shopping bags and champagne bottles. Taxis honked their horns. Beep, beep. Everyone was rushing to get ready for the big countdown. Arthur was rushing too. He finished his work late and ran to the timekeeper's clock. He felt he needed one last piece of advice before the year ended. He burst into the shop, breathless. "Mrs. Gable, I did it. I kept the routine. I cleaned the desk, but I still feel incomplete. Was the last step." Mrs. Gable looked at him calmly. The shop was very quiet compared to the noise outside. "Step 5 is the gift," she said softly. "And step 6 is the identity shift. What does that mean?" Arthur asked, checking his watch. He had to catch the 6 p.m. bus to get home before the celebration started. "You have spent 2 months focusing on Arthur," she said. "Arthur's room, Arthur's habits, Arthur's life. But a true change is not about what you get. It is about who you are to others. To keep your new life, you must give it away." Arthur did not understand. "I don't have money to give," he said. "Not money," she said. "You will see." Arthur left the shop, confused. He ran to the bus stop. The rain started to fall again, a cold, icy rain. He saw his bus coming down the street. It was the last bus for an hour. "I have to catch it," he thought. "I need to get home and write my final journal entry." He ran, but just as he reached the corner, he saw a young man standing near a puddle. The young man looked about 20 years old. He was holding a huge stack of papers, maybe a thesis or a manuscript. Suddenly, a person bumped into the young man. The papers flew into the air. Whoosh! Hundreds of white sheets scattered onto the wet, dirty pavement. The young man looked panicked. He dropped to his knees, trying to save the papers from the mud. "No, no, no," he cried. Arthur stopped running. He looked at the bus. The doors were opening. If he ran now, he could make it. He could go home to his warm, clean apartment. "It's not my problem," his old voice said. "I am busy. I am important." But then Arthur looked at the young man on his knees. He saw the fear in his eyes. And suddenly Arthur saw himself. He remembered the feeling of being overwhelmed. He remembered the feeling of drowning in chaos. Arthur stopped thinking. He didn't run to the bus. He turned around and dropped to his knees on the wet sidewalk. "I've got them," Arthur shouted over the noise of the traffic. He grabbed handfuls of paper before the water ruined them. He worked fast. The young man looked at him, surprised. Together, they gathered every single sheet. The bus doors closed. The engine roared. The bus drove away without Arthur. Arthur sat on the cold ground, his coat wet, his hands dirty. But he handed the dry stack of papers to the young man. "Thank you," the young man breathed. "You saved my life. Really, thank you." Arthur looked at the stranger's smile. And in that moment, the final lock in his heart clicked open. He wasn't the tired Arthur anymore. He wasn't the invisible Arthur. He smiled back. "Happy New Year," Arthur said, and for the first time in 10 years, he truly meant it. Arthur walked home in the rain. He had missed the bus, so he had to walk for 40 minutes. His shoes were soaked. His coat was heavy with water. But strangely, Arthur did not feel angry. He felt light. He climbed the stairs to his apartment and opened the door. 2 months ago, this moment would have made him feel sad. He would have seen a messy room and felt like a failure. But tonight, he opened the door to peace. The room was clean. The floor was empty. The desk was tidy. There were no piles of old magazines. There was only space. Arthur took off his wet coat and hung it up carefully. He went to the kitchen and made a cup of hot tea. Outside the window, the city exploded with noise. Boom! Crack! Colorful fireworks lit up the night sky. People cheered in the streets. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026. Arthur stood by his window, holding his warm cup. He watched the fireworks reflected in the glass. He was alone, but he was not lonely. He realized he didn't need a magical change. He didn't need to be a millionaire or a famous person. He just needed to be the master of his own home and the master of his own mind. As the clock struck midnight, Arthur whispered his reflection. "Welcome home, Arthur." The next morning, the sun was shining. The sky was a bright, crisp blue. It was the first day of January 2026. Arthur put on his coat and walked to the bakery. He bought a fresh loaf of bread. Then he decided to visit Mrs. Gable. He wanted to thank her. He wanted to tell her that he understood the final step. He walked to the corner where the shop stood. He looked for the gold sign, the timekeeper's clock. But the sign was gone. Arthur stopped. He blinked. The shop window was there, but it was dirty and empty. There were no clocks inside. There was no warm orange light. There was only a "For Rent" sign taping to the glass. An old man was sweeping the sidewalk nearby. "Excuse me," Arthur said. "Where is Mrs. Gable, the woman who owns the clock shop?" The old man stopped sweeping. He looked at Arthur with confusion. "Clock shop? There hasn't been a clock shop here for 10 years, son. This place has been empty since 2015. Arthur looked back at the window. He put his hand in his pocket. He felt the small, stiff piece of paper she had given him weeks ago. He pulled it out. The paper was blank. The ink had faded away completely. Arthur stood in the quiet street and smiled. He realized the truth. Maybe she was a ghost. Maybe she was a dream. Or maybe she was just a part of himself that knew he could be better. He didn't need the shop anymore. He didn't need Mrs. Gable. The clock was ticking. And for the first time in his life, Arthur was ready to use it. Let us listen to Arthur's story one more time. We will tell it simply, so we can remember the path he took. Arthur was a man who lived in the gray city of Oakhaven. It was the end of the year 2025. Arthur felt stuck. His apartment was messy. His mind was tired, and he felt like a ghost in his own life. He wanted to change everything instantly, but he did not know how. One rainy night, he found a mysterious shop called the Timekeeper's Clock. Inside, he met an old woman named Mrs. Gable. She did not sell him a clock. Instead, she taught him a lesson about time. She told him step one, the clearing. She said he could not build a new life on a pile of old garbage. Arthur had to stop trying to be perfect. He simply had to clean his desk. He had to throw away the things that were blocking him. Then Arthur learned step 2 and step 3. He learned to build a small routine. He did not run a marathon. He just woke up 15 minutes early. He did not read a whole library. He just read 5 pages. It was boring work. It was lonely work. But he did it every day. When bad days came, Arthur wanted to quit. He wanted to go back to his easy, messy life. But he kept going. He learned to say no to distractions. On the last day of the year, Arthur faced the final test. He was rushing to catch a bus. He was worried about his own schedule. But then he saw a stranger drop papers in the mud. Arthur stopped. He missed his bus to help the stranger. In that moment, Arthur changed. He stopped being the man who only worried about himself. He became a man who could give to others. When he went home, his house was clean. His mind was peaceful. He welcomed the year 2026 with a calm heart. And when he looked for the magic shop the next day, it was gone. The magic was never in the shop. The magic was inside Arthur's small daily choices all along. My name is Mrs. Gable. I have lived in the city for a very long time. Some people say I am a ghost. Some people say I am a spirit of the new year. But really, I am just an old woman who watches. I watch the people of Oakhaven rush and run and worry. I watched Arthur for many months before he saw me. I saw him walking home in the rain. He looked heavy. He walked like he was carrying invisible stones on his shoulders. He looked at the ground. He never looked up at the sky. I knew his heart was tired. When he finally opened the door to my shop, I felt happy. But I had to be strict with him. I saw the hunger in his eyes. He wanted a quick solution. Humans always want a quick solution. They want a pill or a lottery ticket or a magic clock. They want to wake up and be a different person instantly. But I told him the truth. I told him to clear the stones. I watched him struggle. Oh, it was hard to watch. I saw him running in the cold mornings, hating every step. I saw him sitting in his room, lonely and bored. There was a night in December when he stood outside my window in the freezing rain. He wanted to come in and cry. He wanted to give up. I stayed in the shadows. I did not open the door. I knew that if I helped him, he would not learn. He had to stand in the rain alone. He had to find his own strength. And then, on New Year's Eve, I saw the moment that mattered. I was watching from across the street. I saw him running for the bus. He was so close to his goal. He was so close to his warm home. Then the papers fell. I held my breath. I waited. What will you do, Arthur? I thought, will you run or will you stop? When he stopped running and knelt down in the mud, I smiled. I smiled so big that my face hurt. He didn't know it, but that was the real magic. He wasn't just fixing his own life anymore. He was part of the world again. My work was done. I packed my bags. I took down my sign. He doesn't need me now. He has his own time, and he knows how to use it. And so, we leave Arthur in the bright morning of 2026. He is not a superhero. He is just a man living in a quiet apartment with a clean desk. He still has difficult days. He still gets tired. But he is no longer afraid of time because he knows how to use it. We often think that change must be loud. We think we need fireworks or a new job or a winning lottery ticket to be happy. We wait for January 1st to start living. We wait for a sign from the universe. But as Mrs. Gable showed us, real change is quiet. It happens in the small moments that nobody sees. It happens when you choose to clean one messy drawer. It happens when you wake up 10 minutes early. It happens when you say no to a distraction. And it happens when you stop rushing and help someone to reign. Here is the secret truth of this story. You do not need a new year to change your life. You only need a new choice today. My dear friend, thank you for listening to this story. I hope it helps you find a little bit of peace and motivation for your own journey in English and in life. If you enjoyed this time with Arthur and Mrs. Gable, you can help this channel grow. Please click the like button. It is a small action like cleaning a desk, but it helps very much. And I have a question for you. Tell me in the comments, what is one small thing, just one small thing, that you want to change or clean this week? I would love to read your answers. Sleep well, dream of bright mornings, and remember, you can always begin again. Good night.